Okay, let's get started. Warren Select Board, February 5th, 2025. Is there any public comment? Any agenda changes? No? Okay, so we're here for the Select Board to discuss the town garage presentation that happened last week. And put together questions that we have for the engineers, and hopefully give the task force or answer questions for the task force too, and see what they need from us to move forward. Andy, you were mid-conversation. Do you want to continue that one, or do you want to start with the task force?
No, I kind of just wanted to have everybody have an idea of the number that's in their head of, yes, this gets voted in, and no, that doesn't happen at all. And for me, it's definitely under 10, and under 8 would be better. That's what I think.
So where I'm struggling with this is we don't get to choose a number.
Within reason.
That's not what this thing from Stephen Roy says.
Well, he says
give me a number and I'll work
backwards from it. But
I like the idea.
I think that's generous of him. I think what we've said is that we have a need, and this is what this need will cost. I believe there's room to discuss what that need looks like, and is there some flexibility within that need. But we don't set market rates. We don't set the cost of the work. And so whether it's 12 or it's 9.5, it's still a really big number.
Yeah.
And we still need to do it.
Agreed, but it doesn't happen if you don't get the voters to go along.
I agree with that.
So the number and the narrative are what sells it. So we are salespeople now, right? First we were designers, and then we're salespeople. We don't sell it. If you say, it's a lot of money, I don't, no one's voting for that. If you say, this is what we need, this is how much it's gonna cost, ouch, that really hurts. And I really believe in it because of X, Y, Z. Have you been over there? Have you seen this, what they're dealing with? That's what sells it. And it's got to be a number that people can swallow. It can't just be like, oh my God, that's crazy. What's that do to my tax, my tax bill this year for the next 30 years? What does it do?
And I think that's an important piece of it, that we've thrown around the number, but we haven't conveyed, and we don't necessarily have ourselves what that means on a annual basis for everybody.
Exactly.
So people might go, oh my God, $7 million. Are you kidding me? That's ridiculous.
Exactly. But what does it mean to my pocket? It's like when you go to buy the vehicle and the guy's like, well, what do I have to make your payments so that you'll sign this and go out of here today with a car? That's the sales pitch, right? That's what you've got to figure out, what the sales pitch is, and make the sale. And if you don't make the sale, you don't get the garage.
Do we have any clarity on bond structure?
Well, I'm pulling it up right now. So I talked with the Vermont Bond Bank. They outlined a few different things to us. One is that the first step is to go to bond counsel, and they have a list of approved bond counsel folks to help make sure that we get approvals all in the right way, check the boxes. The second step would be to submit an application. They have applications twice a year, one in the winter and one in the spring. And then for the bond itself, they don't have, we won't know what interest is until we receive the money, but they sent over a estimate of what it would look like at this point if we went for, say, the winter programs. We would submit in December and then get money in May, and then be able to start using it. So
with the understanding that you want to submit as close to your start date. That was a point you made in your email.
Right.
so that you don't have, like, the loan isn't available to you and you're paying interest on a project you're not engaged in.
Right, you want to spend the money as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So let me just pull up this. He sent over an estimate just so that we have some numbers to think about.
Which was a little, it was either
Yeah.
hard for me to follow or it
So there are two
fluctuated.
payments a year, so
2 payments a year.
there's two payments a year. The May payment is interest only.
Okay.
And then the November payment would be interest and principal. So
Okay.
principal would be flat, but interest would be accruing over time, or not. It's high at first and then it goes down, yeah.
And so I think the first year it was like almost $1 million. Was that, it's like 630 and 50.
Yeah, so the first year it was 400,000 in principal for a $12 million bond, $400,000 in principal, and then interest of 390 total for the year. And then that would go down every year.
So it's basically first year is 800, 400, 400.
And how many years total?
That was the
30.
third, over a 30-year period.
Is,
He said a 20-year period would be cheaper in the long run, but you probably don't. You have a useful life of at least 30 years, it makes sense to do a 30-year.
that's the longest, 30 years, the longest option.
Didn't
Yeah.
he say something in that email that there were two?
Yeah, so he
scenarios? I can
sent
only
it, he
see
sent
one.
another one, which was the one I think that we wanted more clarity on. So he wanted to. Said, I thought you might also be curious to see how an assumed funding date of March 1st, 2026 and not deferring principal might change the numbers.
Because that you have the opportunity to defer principal for 1 year,
I think it's 3.
3 years.
I don't know. We would have to double check on what that is. But the numbers are very close to being the same. So,
Okay.
it's just, yeah, they're very close.
Can you tell me again what the, what it goes down to, the payment goes down to in year 2? Or what the,
Sure.
Some understanding of how much the interest reduces.
or just what I'm basically trying to figure out what the yearly
I can also send this to your email. Luke, if
payment
you
looks
want.
like.
So in 5/1/2027, that's the interest only payment. That would be 252.3. And then the principal and interest would be the 252.3 plus 400.
So 750, 650,
Yeah.
650.
so 800 the first year, 650 the second year.
Well, it'll be 650 plus another 252. Because there's 2 payments.
I thought it was,
But one was the 250 and one was the 400.
No, the principal
It's
is the
like-
400.
It's really strange to look at.
So why is there an interest only payment this second year? Is that-
There's every year there's an interest only payment.
And plus.
And then-
Plus another payment that's interest and principal.
So they divide the interest twice over the year and principal once.
So you can pay down the interest.
so really we pay, yeah,
You can zoom out too.
I'm just trying to,
Understand what I'm looking at. And so
Mhm.
then, so say it's 800,000 the first year.
Because there is no interest.
It's-
only?
can I,
Why is-
it's basically 900,
Why would they do it that way?
it's basically
It's very
900K a year.
So it's 900 a year.
Yeah, that, I
For
mean,
a
it's
few
almost
years,
a million.
not
For a few years, and then
Okay,
it goes,
sorry, I thought,
Yeah.
yeah.
and
No,
then
it's
it
fine.
goes down
I didn't know if I
over
was
time.
reading it correctly, so.
So it's basically, the easiest way for me to look at it visually is you ignore the first year, that's just
Yeah.
a partial
Mhm.
year
Yeah,
payment,
right.
and you
Right.
have a 400K principal and then 2 interest payments.
Right.
Yep.
So
Right.
it's roughly 900K a year.
Mhm.
So my question is, what does that do to the tax rate?
Thank you.
And our gross budget I don't know that we wanna do this now, but I think
No, I
that's
think
a
this is-
piece of the information that we're trying to get at, right?
Yeah, what are we
We're-
retiring?
We're at 4.8 million is our gross budget right now. Add $1 million to that. We're at 5.8.
But we're also retiring a couple of.
Yeah, we have
We
a
are
Those are
couple
only
retiring
$46,000 though.
Are they? Okay.
But but to your point, don't add $1 million, because that's even going up, and add 900,000. So you're at 5.7.
The other points that were made during the call with the person from the bond bank was that he recommended we look into ways of splitting up the cost and be creative with that. So he pointed to, I think, the Charlotte Town Garage, which did a energy loan also through them to pay for the energy portion of their town garage. So it didn't look like a big bond number at the end of the day.
But you're still.
But
you're
it's,
totally-
But it
yes,
didn't
but it's
change
like
the-
it's breaking it up and it changes some of the financing around it. And I think I think federal grants are a question mark right now across the board, but just noting that there are a lot for rural communities, and so
Yeah.
there might be opportunities there.
Yeah, I think grants is the thing that we haven't explored enough to know how that might impact the total. Which yeah, is just another one of those pieces that I feel like we haven't explored enough to be able to say to anybody, this is what a number is that we're going for.
Does Wyman Lanfear have any sense have they talked at all about grant possibilities or?
Salt shed.
The salt shed is great.
Mhm.
There's a V-Trans grant, which we don't know I don't know the details of, that's 500K,
Mhm.
up to 500K,
Yeah.
good point. So what I was hoping to do tonight is get a list of questions from our group for Wyman Lanfear. So I guess one of them is the grant viability, what their experience is, what they've seen with other towns.
Have we talked about that?
I think that what they've said about that thus far is sort of that, like, that's not their wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Okay,
if we wanna do grants, that's on us.
okay,
And so to your point about a list of questions, I think that's both for Wyman Lanfear and for us.
Yeah.
And like what we need to do
Mhm.
as far as
Absolutely.
research and
Mhm.
outreach.
yep, I guess I see it. It's
So I
like a
think
task
some of
force.
these things, Wyman Lanfear has to tell us why or why not. That, some of these things, we just don't know why it has to be in there, and it might be, has to be in there. Other things that we should just tell them, get rid of.
Well, we can answer some of those questions for you. Like you asked about the sprinkler system, it's a requirement.
Yeah.
We can't get rid of it.
Let's go through.
Do you wanna
Andy,
go through
yeah.
that list?
I've got 4 pages of questions.
Well, do you have I don't wanna go one by one, but if you have,
So the kinds of
Well,
things,
well-
the kinds of things that jumped out at me were to have a little cooktop, little kitchenette cooktop adds 20,000 to the project. That's easy to throw out. Stoop, you're done. $20,000,
Was that related to like an answer system or
Yes.
something? Yes.
code required.
So when you
So-
go to a microwave.
So a microwave, and so I told this to Andrew, he's like, no, that's not a deal breaker. I
Yeah.
had no idea it would cost that much.
Yeah.
And they want to sell us a $3,000 refrigerator.
Yeah.
We can get a refrigerator for $700, a very nice for a bunch of guys to put their drinks in or whatever. It's
Mhm.
there's a whole bunch of things that are just tarted up here that don't need to be. Why are we using gravel? If you don't know what gravel is, it's glass gravel. They doubled the amount that they need. I did the math, they need 230 yards, they spec 500 yards, that's 40,000 extra. Things like that, you start taking them off and you're taking real money after a while.
Good.
So I could be wrong, he might say, oh, no, we need whatever, but
So if
12,000
you
square
take,
feet
if
times
you take
6
the,
inches thick.
if you
divide
take
by
the
27.
gravel out, you have to replace it with insulation and aggregate.
They already have insulation, they have 6 inches of foam on top of the gravel.
The whole point of the gravel is that you don't have to insulate.
You have to have something to tie your tubing to.
Yeah.
So they got both.
Mhm.
I know exactly why
Yeah.
why you use it, and they negate themselves. I don't know why.
So,
It's just a lot of money. It's just, do they know that they have all these redundancies in there? Do they care? You know, or is it like, oh, yeah, I just could have done that. I expected a sharper pencil. That's all.
I also wonder if there's any of that in there as like a contingency based on Act 250 review and wetlands and all
All their
that.
contingencies are right in there. They're adding
Yeah.
between 5 and 10 and 15% on every
Yeah.
single amount.
Mhm.
So it's all in there, and then they add another contingency on top of that. There's a lot of triple redundancy in adding and,
Mhm.
you know, that's,
This is all done by a firm
Yeah.
that does estimating.
Yep.
And
And they
those
know-
guys,
hell of a lot more than I do.
not only that, but those guys want to err on the
that's
side
right,
of
they've been
being,
very conservative.
too expensive, because they get hammered when they didn't put in enough. And a town like ours goes in for a bond vote and they say, wait a minute, we got all these bids and they were
Yeah.
150% of what you estimated. What's the story?
So Jim, tell me this, what do you think happens when everybody knows what your bond vote is? And they know what the spec sheet says, and they say, oh, there's extra in here, we can go right up to the level. We're playing with our cards on the table.
I know, I realize that.
Not really any way around
This-
that.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But that's why you have to start with a knockdown number that is not to
I
exceed.
agree, I think it'd be really good for you to have this conversation directly with Steve Roy.
Or at least give us the questions so that we
Yeah,
can
yeah.
have that conversation, because that's my piece of this that I said all along. I don't know how to read these estimates and say, oh, that's a crazy high number, and couldn't we do this instead? That's not my wheelhouse, that's why I backed off in that part of it. We need to ask those questions.
It's not even my wheelhouse, and I'm in the business.
Yeah.
The big question I have with this whole thing is, let's say, we have established with the road crew that this is the building we need. And there aren't a lot of extra fancy stuff on it. You know, there isn't a solar array and a bunch of extra fancy stuff. So it's not a extravagant building. It does meet the needs, the present and future needs of what we understand road crew is. And they're in a, what I understand is almost a condemned building.
Pretty darn
Right,
close.
yeah, right
Yeah.
now. So the question I have is, let's say we vote this thing down, in 2 more years, when that building finally collapses, or when we just can't use it again, it's not gonna be less.
It's gonna be
Right.
more, and Steve
It's
said
not-
500,000 a year in
I know.
escalation.
So,
That's not a guarantee.
I mean, I'm with you. I think we have to make a very strong case, and I think we should do it at town meeting, whether we have a vote on the bond
I
or not.
absolutely agree.
We can say, hey, this is what's coming up. We don't have to pay for the land, which is a huge savings. We own the land already. We're going into this thing saying, well, this isn't, we're not building the Taj Mahal here.
Yeah.
We're building a shed. And it was flabbergasting for me to read that it was now $830 a square foot in the Valley Reporter, which I don't believe is the case.
It's because they lump all of the site work and the road work together.
Yeah, that's right. You don't do that with buildings.
I know.
The building square footage is the
But
building.
Wyman Lanford does it, that's how they do it.
It's how the estimating.
That's how they're,
Yeah.
yeah, that's how they're presenting it.
But-
And so, of course, Mr.
but
Loomis
as
is
a-
going,
But as a
okay, I can do
But
that.
as a citizen, I read $830 a square
Right.
foot. That's what they're doing custom houses for, with
Correct.
the tile bathrooms
That's
and,
exactly,
cherry
exactly right.
countertops and, the whole 9 yards. So, if if to move forward on this, I'm with you. We have to get this whole thing together, and we have to have the people who use it make a statement. You know, I think Andrew's got to get up there and say, this is what we've got. You know, Camilla said I can make a little film.
That, we talked about
Yeah,
doing that. I
this is
think that's a
this
great,
is where we are now. We can't put the building we need on the site. We've tried that and it doesn't work. So here's what we're left with, and here's the best thing we can do. I was a real proponent of option A, which was the longer driveway, because I thought it might be slightly better for the neighbors. But $3 million, you know, that's a powerful
yeah,
argument.
that sets you
Yeah.
right
That's
on
a
your,
powerful argument for option
right on your
B.
heels.
And we can do other stuff, or hopefully other stuff. I mean, we oriented the place so that all the activity is behind the building, so to speak. And it's down in this little place. So it seems like we've made a real effort to be good neighbors with the thing. And for $3 million, I was flabbergasted that it cost that much to
Mhm.
move the road, but I understand why it does, you know.
And I think actually it would be a worse product, because that road you would see from the neighbors on West Hill, would be right there in front of them. Be right on that backside of the berm.
Maybe so. So, you know, anyway. I'm just nervous that we go into this thing, I think we have to make a great presentation to the town. And like I said, it should happen at town meeting. Say, hey, this vote is coming up. If you need any more information than we're giving you today, come see us and we'll give it to you. So, and then we have the town, and then we have the vote.
I think it's important to address this notion of leaving it where it is. And we can't leave it where it is. I think we need to flesh that out. We need to explain to people. It's not that we couldn't leave it where it is. We could build something there, but in 5 to 10 years, we'd be looking at abandoning that and building it somewhere else. And we would have put a whole bunch of money.
But isn't that
into
what Bob
something there.
did at town meeting last year? He had a
Yes.
slideshow just about that,
Yeah,
and nobody
Yes.
remembers it.
yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
it's hard to sell something, but
Well, now we're putting it in context. I mean,
Yeah.
we started a conversation and it was just like, bloop, and everybody said, wait, what's going on? And then we dropped it.
Mhm.
Now we need to put it in context of, okay.
Yeah.
So we're moving forward with the town garage. This is what this looks like. This is what this looks like. Because, it's not that we can't rebuild a garage there, but it will be ridiculously inefficient to rebuild a garage, to invest a bunch of money in the garage that we would be able to build there. We'd
Well-
still need to be using the pit.
And it wouldn't even serve our current needs. That we can't
That's
build
what
it
I'm
large
saying.
enough to serve
I
the
mean-
current needs.
Any
Unless we-
more efficiently than we are now, which is pretty poor.
Yeah,
So that's part of helping people understand the inefficiencies over there. So I just think that we need to flesh out all of that information, and we need to have all of that presented so that there isn't well, why can't you just do this? Well, why do you need that? We need to answer all of those questions.
Do you have those emails and that conversation from Steve Bannon? I think the majority of it.
I have some of it.
Okay,
I think it.
I think
I
we
have-
have
I
the
have
whole.
Also in
Okay.
the Google Drive folder on our shared
Yes,
folder.
I think it is. Yeah.
Okay,
Those
so
are the
that's-
documents
The
are-
drawings, yeah.
Yeah.
And
that seems pretty, all of that work done
Mhm.
is accessible.
yes, definitely.
The other question I had to just add to your list is for brownfield remediation. There also used to be a ton of grants for work like that.
Mhm.
I don't know what the future of the EPA or no future of the EPA, if that's still going to happen, but I think there's a question there of like where that might live and if that's still available at some level, whether it be federal or state.
The site remediation at the
Mhm.
current site, which was called which was only,
It's in the budget.
I know, and it was lower than I thought, to be
Yeah.
honest, 137,000.
Was it that low?
I don't remember, maybe I'm wrong, but anyway, I think that's another great grant opportunity or investigation. Um, So I think that, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just to help us identify grants for this kind of thing. There's got to be a group or a,
VLCT or the state would be a good place to
yeah, the
start.
state, yeah, VLCT, maybe,
Yeah, I mean, luckily this is,
VLCT had that page to dedicated to like, oh, you wanna build like a public works
Oh,
building.
yes, right, yeah, yeah.
yeah, we're not the first, which,
Right, exactly.
Helps.
Without going to individual towns, there's gotta be a
Mhm.
resource.
so it sounds like we're all in agreement that on building a new building, and that we need to make a good presentation of the town and also work with Wyman Lanphier to get this number as low and accurate as possible.
So aside from what we've heard from Andy as far as like a number, what do you guys feel like is saleable, or do you not think of it that way?
Well, I think I agree with both you and Andy. I know that we can't determine, the way that we can reduce the cost is by not doing things.
Mhm.
We can't decide that the building costs 8 million.
Mhm.
I guess I was coming at it similarly, and maybe this came from a previous discussion that we were in the last year or 2 years ago, we were in the 4 to 6 range. So I think the top end for me in my head was 8 to 10. So that's where 12 to 15 came in high. But again, I fully acknowledge that I don't get to decide what it costs. So we can't decide, we can decide what we want to pay. And, I guess the only real leverage we have, or the only accurate thing we can do is, like Andy, ask questions about what things
Right, line items.
Yeah,
are removable.
yeah.
Gravel, if that's in there twice, if that's a big one, and
Well,
seems
and I mean,
unnecessary.
in my experience with estimating, when you start pulling someone's estimate apart like that, there are parts that we don't see or that we don't
I
understand,
know that.
right?
I know that.
But contingency that's a funny thing to have in the budget. Usually you don't have that in the budget, or
Well, you have
I've
rates.
never seen it.
Right.
Usually you say, this is the budget for this project.
And you might have a verbal understanding
Yeah.
that, hey, things happen, and when you come across that, you have that conversation, but
That's right.
Excuse me, can I just ask a question also? I'm not quite sure what any of these prices will mean in months ahead with the prices of lumber that might end up becoming an issue. And that might be something also that might end up being taken into consideration depending on how these trade wars and so on go on. And the prices of lumber might end up being astronomical at some point. So the sooner any of this comes to a number, it might be changing radically soon.
Agreed.
A lot of variables there.
I totally agree, and I don't want to imply that we aren't at risk of any of that happening. I will say that at least steel was largely affected 8 years ago and is now mostly produced here. We should ask them about that, and it is primarily a steel building as opposed to a wood building, so we might have a little more security in that one aspect. Gravel is also produced here. It's a very cool product.
Mhm.
I wish you'd pick something else to pick on.
I wish they had gotten their numbers right, and then I wouldn't pick on.
Are you considering the apron outside the building for that in your calculations?
No, they didn't suggest that was what it was for.
Well, if you're looking at sub-slab gravel, right, then they're gonna go 4 feet outside the building.
That's
all the
not
way
how
around.
they spec'd it, though.
I haven't looked at it, so I'm
Well-
just asking.
It could be that they've wasted a lot out there, yes.
It's possible. I don't know if it's waste.
Yeah, we don't know. I guess that begs the question, what's our time frame with Wyman Lanphier for turnaround? What do you,
Does anybody have-
if we come if we put together a list of questions and suggestions and ideas and the task force goes to Wyman Lanfear, what's our turnaround?
They've
time?
been really fast
Yeah.
about getting back to us.
Yeah,
They've been-
they want us to go to vote on the 4th, so
Yeah.
they're like making it happen.
Yeah.
They've
They're
been
encouraging
incredibly
us to do that.
responsive and on top of it.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, Steve just today gave us 5 or 6 or 7 potential
Yeah.
ideas
He
to
was
reduce
willing to come to
costs.
the meeting tonight, because,
Yeah.
you know, but we said we didn't think that we needed him here tonight until we discussed it.
So I guess my question is, how quickly and how do we get to a different number?
Well, maybe to Andy's point, we say, look, what would we have to do to get this down to 10? And what about all of these contingencies? Are they necessary in this bond vote? Or, because I guess what's confusing me just in this conversation, I have to admit, I have not had the time to go through this estimate of fine. What's concerning me is that if there's room for error in each and every line item, and then that goes into the contingency as well, it
There's
inflates the cost of the
By a
project
lot.
exponentially, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to just like, hey, let's be aware that we could see a 20% overage.
It's 8 to 10 on top of 10 to 15.
Right,
Yeah, so
Over
I
and
think,
over again.
I don't know if this is what you're getting at, but I think we need to get Andy's questions, any of our questions,
Mhm.
to them as soon as
Yes.
possible.
Yes.
Set a date for our next meeting and go over the answers to those questions,
Okay.
which, I mean, we could give them a target. We could say, here are questions on these line items, and this was our target, or do we wait and have that meeting and then I'm
Having
just
a-
not sure about giving them the target number.
I have concerns with that too. Maybe a 2-step approach is,
Yeah.
having, rather than say, let's get, we need this by a certain date. Give them the product of this conversation,
Yeah,
because that might get us 80% there, and then we can fine tune rather than.
and
If we have a
so
good,
to
I'm sorry,
that-
if we
yeah.
have a good back and forth relationship with them, that's much easier, I think.
You do.
than-
yeah.
Yeah.
They've been
I think
great.
that's wise. What were you gonna say?
I just wanted to ask on this, these 2 emails that he sent today, the first one, he had a number of 12,040,000.
Right,
The second one,
2 million less than what we saw.
well, no, because this is on the,
This is
this
B.
is on
Yeah.
Plan B, so it's not that
Plan B.
much less than
Okay.
Plan B. But then the second one, he came up with $1.3 million of potential savings. Is that off of the 12 million?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or is that,
Yes.
the 12 is after the 1.3?
No,
Okay,
the 12 is the number he gave us,
and then
and
he
then he gave some
found
options,
the
He
1.3.
found 1.3 in savings, possible.
possibly. Can we
Including
run
a
through
grant.
that list
Sure.
together? Cause I'd like to get a feel
Yeah.
from you guys, like what you're willing to compromise on. And I just wanna remind us
So-
that we committed to doing this right now, so that we don't end up with, we really should have done that, and now we can't afford it, and we already pulled the bond, and I just wanna remind us that.
Which I fully support. So the first one, which is a big question of mine, and again, I'm not criticizing work. I just have questions about the site work in total. What,
Mhm.
how do we come up with that number? Is it,
Oh, this is,
Just
I think, an easy one that we could absolutely take off. I think what they're talking about there, and Andrew and I have pushed them a little bit on this in the last couple of meetings, is like, don't grade the site.
yeah.
Like, stop trying to make everything perfect and flat. We don't care.
I think and that's the way to approach it, is not say, we want this line item gone, just to call attention to it, say, can we do anything here? Can we do
Right.
anything with site work?
Wiggle
Yes.
Do we have any?
I think he's saying that. That's what I think he's saying.
I
in this one.
agree.
It's
And
like, okay, let's not worry about making everything meet 967 elevation and just,
we,
Okay.
we also have, and I think he might call this out too, the next thing he says, less time for the GC to be on site. We have a supervisor, assistant supervisor, project manager, assistant project manager, all with vehicles, and office workers. That totals, I can't do the math quickly, but well
That's
over
700, yeah.
600K. So if it's needed okay. If not, again, this might be an area where we can reduce cost.
So we'll, but that's not our call, right? That's who, we hire J.A. McDonald. They
Yeah.
say, we need 4 supervisors on this, that's how we
Yeah,
do it,
true.
baby. Boom.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, as a company, I would be like, no, no, no.
You
I'm
don't
not
get to
gonna
tell me-
compromise
you
the
don't get to tell
quality
me
of
I
the
would
project.
too. I would too. I guess it's a weird, like Andy said, it's a weird, we're playing with our cards out. So
Mhm.
how much of these numbers dictate what then becomes
So-
bid price?
So the big numbers are the earthwork and the exterior improvement site work, right? The earthwork is out of 1.4 million, 1.443, so almost $1.5 million. A full million of it is excavation at site, tree cutting, 32,000. Not a lot, but still, there's not a lot of trees to cut. Grubbing, moving grubbed fill, and site grading and backfilling is $1 million even. And it's a bunch of material that's already on site and just needs to get reused.
So that one line item, level the fill and grubbing amounts and less front pad gravel infill work. I don't even know what that means.
Right.
Where's your level of fill? Are we on?
This is his
The email.
email from today where he's
Well,
taking
that's,
it down.
So
that's a
it's-
number of the different parts of this, and grubbing means like removing stumps
Yeah.
and getting the place flat and throwing stuff, junk
Level the
away.
fill and grubbing amounts?
So he's talking about all those things that I just mentioned,
Mhm.
which are $1 million. He's saying he could pull out what,
Shave off 150.
150?
Do less. Yep.
Because it's not even do less, it's use what's already there.
Well, it's I mean, less too.
So I talked to Andrew today, he says, I don't know where we're gonna put the 3,000 yards of gravel that we have just sitting there for the
Right.
roads. It's gonna be right in the way, we gotta do something with it. Well, what we do is we tell the contractor, you gotta use that when you need gravel, because it's already here. And we'll get new gravel for our roads when we need it. I mean, those are the kinds of things that we're gonna have to find places to put stuff. There's so much stuff already there. There is so much extra material there to level that place. You're gonna bring it down and use 20,000 yards to widen that road. And the road doesn't even need that much widening, because there's, I drove up there today and I looked at it, and depending on how far you have to push it down or change it a little bit so that you don't fill wetlands and things like that. All the material for that kind of work is there. It's perfect material. It's bank run gravel.
Yeah.
You know, it's boulders the size of this table.
Okay.
There's all kinds of stuff there. And when you're sitting in an office somewhere, am I right that these guys are from Connecticut? The
Why don't
estimators?
they here?
No, the estimators. There was a couple guys that were out in Connecticut.
Oh, PCI, I don't know.
And so if they're looking at Connecticut prices, well, guess what? Of course, it's looking pretty heavy. And they're not looking at the site and going, oh, a lot of that stuff is totally reusable. So why would you truck it all up and then bring the same stuff back in
And
and
we
charge
can
for
bring
it?
that, we can bring that up with,
Yeah.
with.
I wrote that down.
Well, I think that's where he's seeing $100,000 worth of savings. I'm seeing about $400,000 in savings. So, and I am not a professional at this, and these guys are, but it doesn't mean they're seeing what we're seeing.
Right.
Or know that we can use the gravel that's up there.
Yep.
We haven't mentioned that, so. IMP wall construction
Insulated metal panel.
as opposed to,
I think they're switching to stick frame around the office.
Yeah, if you look at the rendering, there's a little change in the edge, the outside of the building where the offices
yeah, I
are.
noticed that.
And they're saying, hey, we can eliminate that and just make it all the same color.
That's a fancy detail.
Mm-hmm. Propane, we
Not
talked
that
about.
fancy, but there's a number
It's an
attached to it.
aesthetic thing, yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry. Propane mechanical.
Yeah, I mean, we can go through. Does anyone have questions on this? Because I think these are all great areas to investigate for savings.
I think
Heroes in the computer.
I answer.
Andrew,
Can I try?
have something to say about the less concrete or
Yes.
the apron, the concrete apron.
I think we totally want the concrete apron.
I
I
think we
agree.
need the concrete apron.
I think
And we
that's
need to
not
pay-
negotiable.
And we need to
That's
pay
not
for it as well.
Okay.
That's all.
But do we need a elevated slab in the mezzanine area? Why we have a 4-inch slab that's,
Well, we asked that question when we were designing it. He said it will actually be more cost effective because what did he say? In order to sustain the weight of storage materials, you're better off using concrete to disperse over the steel joists than doing it otherwise. Was that something like that?
There
We
was
were
a-
like, why do
We
we
had
need
a pretty good reason for doing the concrete up there. It was a fire issue or a weight issue or something
Okay.
like that.
Okay.
And it could be used. I mean, one of the options we looked at was not having the
I was just gonna
mezzanine
say,
over the whole office space,
Right.
just having over part of it. But there's
Once
just
you're up there.
airspace up there. And it seemed like very little more money, you could do it. It's an extra staircase.
and the floor system.
Yeah, and the floor system for that. And it seemed crazy not to do the mezzanine when Andrew said, man, we could really use that for storage, signs and all kinds of stuff.
Is that anything that could be done later?
I don't think. you do
No, I
that
don't
kind of
think
thing
so
with it.
if it's concrete.
Because that's another thing that we, sort of talked around is phasing. Is there any phasing? But this building's pretty basic.
It's pretty basic.
When we talk about phasing, we should maybe reconsider the demolition because
Yeah.
it's 588,000.
I thought it was 500.
It's almost 600 grand.
Yep.
So I don't know. Is that something we could do ourselves? I'm not sure.
Right.
Is it something we could bring a smaller company in
Or,
or something
yeah,
to
sub
do
out.
that we don't need all of the oversight and management for? My worry here is just that we really don't want it to get put off for an extended period of time. But
That would be up to the select.
that would be up to the select board. Yeah.
Make it happen.
And if we wanted to have the conversation about selling that
Mhm.
lot, that could also, it could be sold with what's on it, and it would be up to a developer to bear the
Yep.
cost.
Yep.
So,
I like that idea.
I think that's a great way to look at it, instead of selling it and making money, you give it away and save that money, depending on how that all works. I think that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. The last thing on Peter's or Steve's.
However, could I just say
Sure.
this one thing? That's, at least to some people, I think that's an appealing part of this project.
he's getting rid of it.
That there's this site that's available all of a sudden for another purpose,
Well,
housing or
Get a developer
whatever. And,
Yeah.
and that is something to consider.
Sure.
Maybe it makes more sense to separate it out. But I know at least a few people are thinking, whoa, that really frees up a prime site for some maybe downtown affordable housing.
But somebody's gonna have to do that development, so
yeah.
it could be that
Yeah.
is part of that
Condition.
project, yeah.
It could be a
We
way
give you
to
the
make-
land, you clean it up, whatever it is, you work
Yeah.
that out with the developer.
I agree. It would be great to be able to offer up a clean site, but maybe that's not affordable.
But
Um,
it doesn't
But if it
take
brings
still a
down
piece of it.
if it brings down the overall price by 500,000
Yeah.
bucks, that's a powerful argument for.
And it doesn't
Yeah.
take the option for it to become
Yeah,
something
yeah,
more
yeah,
off the
yeah,
table.
yeah,
It's
I
just
agree.
saying,
I agree.
The last thing that Steve brought up is, or the last potential savings option is not paving the road, which.
That's a non-starter,
Yep.
frankly.
It has to be paid.
I think
Yes.
we've
Yes.
had
I
a
don't think we want
conversation.
that not to be paid.
Yeah.
Dust, cleanliness.
And-
Dust
noise.
and erosion
With,
and,
with leaving it at the grade that it is, it's gonna need that, I think.
no,
Yeah.
we did have somebody last meeting who thought that the cost of bringing all the materials up to that site was gonna be enormous in terms of fuel usage. So every delivery truck, every salt truck, every gas truck, and I took a look at it, it's only about 70 foot of elevation
Yeah.
gain. It's not that big a deal.
I don't
It's
think it's
not that big.
Huge number.
So I think that is a bit of a red herring, so just wanted to alert you to that.
Mary?
So I appreciated hearing you, someone say earlier and then having it repeated about playing with your cards on the table. And so I'd just like to, I know you're trying to wrap this up by 7:30 and it won't take too much of your time. Sorry, I can't see. Either. So I think there's a couple of questions. I'm sorry, I missed last week's meeting. I was in the air. It was not happening. And they don't let you log in from the plane. My first question is the bond vote Australian ballot?
Yes.
So is what you're talking about here, having this on as a bond vote on town meeting day?
We don't know.
Yeah,
We're not.
That's what we're
Okay, so
discussing.
when are you going to be deciding that?
When we feel we have the answers that we need to know what we're talking about.
I guess more specifically than, with the cards on the table, when do you need to make that decision for it to be legally warranted?
Yeah.
What's our drop dead date?
I don't know. Even the drop dead date for getting it on the ballot, I'm not sure of.
We
So
know,
you don't
don't
know
we,
the date.
Rebecca? It's,
I'm just, Steve, I think, put it in his,
Yes.
we've read it a few times. It has to be warned
It's not a mess.
every week
Oh,
for
yes.
3 weeks,
consecutive weeks.
three
Yeah.
consecutive weeks in advance.
yeah,
But it's one of those or no less than.
right.
5 to
5
10
days.
5 to 10 days
Right,
before.
so it's a little confusing.
You
Our
have to work
hope,
back from 5 to 10 days window.
In other words, we need to make it this week. We need to decide.
we have to
by the-
decide like now.
Yeah.
Tonight,
Yeah.
if we're going to go for a bond vote on
At
town
least
meeting or
within
not.
the,
That was
Well,
this week. That's why we
We
said.
can't make the decision tonight because we don't have a number. We need a number before we can go for a bond vote, right? I mean, we have to tell, we can't just say we're going for a bond vote and then supply the number at the last minute.
Well, I think that was Steve's recommendation.
Not to exceed,
Not to
which I
exceed.
Yeah.
did.
just to pick
Okay.
a
You
You
number.
can
and
use
say-
language that will say not to
I
exceed.
see.
Sorry, Mary, let's go get
So
through
you
Mary's
don't
questions.
know-
Yeah.
So
We
the
don't.
question is,
We
you
haven't
don't
decided
know-
yet.
You don't know when you have to warn it by, you don't know when you have to give the voters a number.
So we
We
know
know-
that
we
we have
know-
to decide now.
Yes.
We know we have to decide today.
You
We
to
haven't
decide
decided.
today, and you have to pick a number today, correct?
We have to pick a no greater than number today.
Okay, so, but it will be Australian ballot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Has to be.
Okay, and
Yep.
are there going to be public hearings before town meeting?
I'd say there'll be at least one, won't there?
Yeah, we
Well,
could
we
have an informational. If this were gonna be on the
Another one?
ballot,
Did we have that? Did we have that scheduled?
We
we
intended
don't-
for our informational public meeting to be town meeting.
Is
Yeah, 'cause we
that,
had
that. Yes.
with school ballots, with school votes, you can't, be discussing, correct, at the same time? Can you be discussing the bond vote at the time that you're voting on it? At town meeting or at the same
Well, we
time?
haven't read anything to the contrary.
I don't know.
In what.
I don't, I think she might be right about that. I think you cannot discuss the day of the actual voting because you'll be
Correct.
discussing
Then
it, some
somebody's
people
already
already have
voted.
voted.
right,
Yeah, I
So
think that's true.
the informational meeting would probably need to be the week before, I would think. You want to do
I think
it.
it has to be at least 3 days before, yeah.
And since we can't put this in the paper until a week from tomorrow's paper, we probably have until Tuesday to make this call, yay or nay.
Which.
Whether we're doing the bond.
That gets us our.
Yep.
You have legal counsel or you have somebody who's advising you about the time limits and so that you do it properly or?
We won't do it if we don't do it properly. There would be no use to doing it if we don't.
Yeah.
do it
Well, if
properly.
we did, the other thing to throw in here is if we did go out for a bond vote, we do need to consult bond counsel
Mhm.
to make sure that we're checking all the boxes right. Otherwise, we won't qualify for the bond. So we need to, that would also be something that could impact our timeline. is-
Sounds like we're not having a bond vote at town meeting.
I think we just need to reach out to them and see what is needed. And that would be kind of the next big step for us.
Yeah,
I think it could be helpful to have the bond vote in June and to have town meeting be the informational
I
meeting.
agree.
I agree.
I agree with that.
I think we're just pushing it we don't
We're
have
trying to throw it in a box that doesn't want to
Yeah,
get it.
enough
Based on
entities
this
to
meeting,
get
it
it
just
done
doesn't
for.
feel right.
It's only worth doing if we do it right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
I agree.
exactly.
I agree.
And I would like to see a lower number that we're putting
Yeah.
on it as a not to exceed if possible.
Oh,
Yeah.
I agree with
Yeah,
you.
then what he's proposed, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has there
Yeah.
been any further feedback from B-Tran?
We're,
No,
None.
no. Oh, Mary, do you?
Well, that would be the second, I'll just run through my list.
Please.
right now. So regarding the bond vote, you have a lot of things that you don't know at this point, including a number. The one thing we do know is that it will be Australian ballot.
Yes.
So the voters will have an opportunity, if someone, for example, is out of town, they can get an absentee ballot
Yep.
and can vote on it. I think it's fairly
absolutely.
critically given.
Yeah.
With that kind of money, there's no other way we would do it.
By statute, bond votes have to be by Australian
That
ballot.
was my understanding. I just wasn't sure if it's your understanding as well. The second thing is that you seem to be moving ahead regardless of the safety considerations at the intersection. And I apologize that I wasn't here last week. But, as you're aware, there was just another accident right in front of the Johanssons. You just mentioned that you're not expecting any information from V-Trans.
Well-
Is there a reason that, is it because you were so sold on this, or that you don't believe that there are traffic issues there?
Can I respond?
Go, yeah. go ahead.
I've been working on this issue a little bit more closely, and I asked VHB if they could just mention it to V-Trans. At the meeting last week, what basically came to light is that the Main Street and Route 100 is a different intersection than Von Brown and Route 100. So they aren't really willing to talk about that intersection while we talk about traffic going up Von Brown. That said, I have spoken to them a couple of times expressing our concerns. As a town, regardless of the town garage, this intersection is problematic, it's dangerous, we'd like to see the speed reduced. Can you please pay attention to us? So VHB reached out to V-Trans on our behalf and said, hey, here are their concerns. What can be done? And VHB responded to us with an email just saying who we can talk to at V-Trans, that they're interested in hearing our concerns, and that they will start to look at traffic patterns. They haven't done any significant studies, but they would be willing to do so. So that was literally this evening at 5. I haven't had the opportunity to share that with anybody else. And from a board perspective, I know we're interested in pursuing that.
So are you
Separately.
planning on taking that information into consideration and making a decision about locating this here? Or are you, have you just decided you're doing it and it doesn't deal with Route 100 later?
So I just want to, this discussion about this intersection in
Correct.
particular,
Mhm.
and you just mentioned it. Right, the issue, the biggest issue we have is the intersection of Main Street and 100, right? And the vehicles that from the town that are coming and going from the current town garage are going through the Main Street Route 100 intersection right now. And they will
Different
be,
Situation here.
they will be going Von Brown Route 100 if we change it. So-
Certainly there are some that go through there, certainly not all of them. And it is also, given this configuration, it's sort of interesting that they choose to see that differently, or that you guys may choose to see that differently. When, for the firsthand experience of that is that it is a 5-point intersection. And it is a problematic intersection.
Mhm.
And if, you want to parse it out and say, well, let's just look at this piece. I guess that's one of the things that with local government, that you have this knowledge and you have this input from people who are living with it. None of you live right around there. You all pass through it at different times. Certainly you did to get there this evening. But you don't have the direct, everyday experience of it. And I think that, well, right,
I don't know about
I see
that.
you making a funny face there, and that's.
I think I go through it probably as many times a day as you do.
Well, I'm increasingly reclusive, so that's
There you go.
probably very true. So, however, I think you've had a lot of information. You are our local, board. And it just seems surprising to me that you're not, maybe taking that concern more seriously.
Very-
I
Very
totally
concerned about that
disagree. I
intersection.
totally disagree. We're very serious, but here's the thing. We know the speed that our wonderful V-Trans in state of Vermont works at. So basically, if we're waiting for them to tell us they're gonna do something about this, well, do you remember in Waitsfield when they were gonna realign 117? Well, we're waiting 25 years later for that to happen, and it hasn't happened. And my guess is it's another 25 years before it does happen.
So the
So
conclusion
kicking the
to
can
which,
down the road is what we've already been doing with the town garage, and I think we're ready to act.
and the conclusion to which we've come is that, yes, Mary, we are pursuing moving the town garage. And separately, we will pursue making that intersection safer.
So interesting. I share my neighbors and surrounding property owners' concern that it is an unsafe situation. And I think it's ill-advised to be moving ahead with it without a more comprehensive plan for traffic safety at that point. And, I would say that you guys, it's great that you have reached out to them. I agree with you, understand how, V-Trans, may move at a glacial pace. On the other hand, it is an ongoing and present problem. And that having more traffic in there and coming in at a slope, having higher level of traffic at the intersection is gonna be hazardous.
Copy that.
You can deal with that problem after it becomes more catastrophic. So, which just sounds like what you're, planning on.
That isn't our plan. We
I
are
don't
under
think
the
that was fair.
impression that it won't. We had a lot of conversations about this last week. We don't see the move of the town garage creating an undue burden on the intersection that doesn't already exist. Because, as Camilla said, those same trucks are now traveling all the way through town and on Main Street and getting out onto 100. They will now more often be going Von Braun 100 instead of coming down Main Street. Furthermore, and Jess, please, if you have anything to add, feel free, commented that, of all of the people driving, the town road crew are trained on the job professionals who are safe and careful and cautious. So we don't see them as being contributors to accidents.
And our road crew foreman mentioned that he feels safer, he has better sight lines pulling out of Von Braun Road than he does pulling onto onto Route 100 from Main Street. So when we put all of these things together, we're not thinking, oh my goodness, this is going to be a higher level of danger in that intersection. We're just not seeing it that way.
Okay, so the answer is no.
When I look at that, intersection, and I think, and I do back what I said before about the town road crews being incredibly responsible and safe, and they're always very, I never feel unsafe walking in town around the town crews. My concern with that is that they're coming across Route 100, pulling out slowly, then to turn onto Main Street slowly, or they're coming from a standstill on Main Street to cross Route 100 slowly to go back uphill. And it's more the convergence of the two blind hills where people they know it's going to be a straightaway, and they start, you get a little bit of service coming through there. You can pick it up on your cell phone. I see people on their phones flying off 100 coming by my house all the time. So if you're coming over that hill and you're like, I'm going to get service, and you're not paying attention to the 2-ton truck or however much they, coming out of Von Braun Road, you will end up with a 60-mile-an-hour catastrophic accident right there. It's just this, them coming out and in from 100 to me is, and again, it's, I don't know how to fix this problem, but that is the concern for me, is that this slow moving vehicle is stopped on Von Braun Road, coming into a 25 mph. They can't cross 100 that fast. They're going to be moving slow in a 50 mph speed limit back and forth. And it's just a straightaway where people just go too fast. They don't see people pulling out of Main Street. They don't care. They're not going to see trucks pulling out of Von Braun Road. It's not the town drivers, it's everyone else. It's that speech that all of our parents gave us. I know you're safe in the car, it's everyone else. Or at least that my parents gave me. So it's, that's my concern. And again, I don't know how to solve that problem in that intersection, but it definitely, whether or not Von Braun Road is arguably a part of the Main Street intersection, it's going to create this different traffic pattern from Von Braun Road that travels down onto Main Street, and they're not going to pick up speed. And that's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
For me, living here.
Yeah. And last week we talked at length about the entrance to Main Street. I've witnessed somebody coming from Main Street to go to West Hill and someone on Route 100 going north and that's, flew them off into the guardrail that got knocked down. It's the other people. But it's last week we talked a lot about Main Street, and it is a five-way entry. And yes, it goes back to Vermont Trans, but it might have to really be a little more enforced through Vermont Trans as kind of an agency.
So your position is that you're not going to be doing anything about that other than what you're.
We're going to do as much as we can to make that intersection safe, and we're going to work on it as we work on the town garage. We're not going to make them contingent.
Okay, at this point, it's whatever your engineer is proposing is what you're going to be doing.
V-Trans will be part of this.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
at some
It's
point.
not, the engineers don't get to decide, the V-Trans will have to be part of it.
I think to try to close this loop, we all agree, we're all saying the same thing. We all have concerns about that intersection, and we're trying to do multiple things at once. So we hear you, but let's move on.
Okay, so then my next question is, it is still unclear to me why you're proceeding with this in light of the agreement that was made in good faith with the selectmen for perpetuity for specific uses for that site.
I know that I was on via Zoom, but I know that this was discussed at length, and I think Andy, the short version is that we see that interpretation, we interpret that differently. And we understand the concerns and your view.
Yeah. I would say that probably there are a number of people who think that it is enforceable.
Okay.
You choose to think that it's not, and that
we've been
as
advised.
You as the board do not feel bound by either the signed letter of and perpetual easement agreed to by earlier Board of Selectmen, or by the good faith of an agreement that was made by an earlier Board of Selectmen. You do not feel bound by that. That's correct?
Correct.
Not under the current conditions.
Oh, yeah, so that gives us all, a bit of insight into your integrity, I guess. So, okay, so the next question is this, that I have, is that regarding one of the things that you've said repeatedly is that you don't, that there's no other site in town where this could be cited.
Not that we found, we did pretty extensive search.
Yeah, I would say offhand, I think a lot of us don't really agree with you on that, and that there could be sites that would be better and would be safer. And I will say one of the things that, for example, right now, that I think as we're looking ahead at short-term and long-term, is that we know we're going to be seeing a lot of big changes already in terms of the availability of what's likely to be happening with grant money and with that type of thing that has been available in the past. We're going to be seeing changes in education, and it is not news that the Warren School has been targeted for closure at times in the past and consolidation. And I think all of us hope that that's not the case. On the other hand, I think we're all finding out how very helpless we can be in these situations. And that one scenario would be if the Warren School is targeted, you've got land, I believe that land is owned by the town, not the district. That you've then got land adjacent to the existing site. And there are probably other sites around as well. But I would say that I sort of remain in the number who don't necessarily think that you've exhausted, sites that might be much more suitable and safer and better long-term.
Do you have any particular sites in mind or
So
recommendations?
I think about it from time to time.
Mhm.
And then I don't.
Yeah,
Because we've
it's not
we've
Yeah,
personally visited virtually every piece of property.
I've had
It's in the
engineers.
town of Warren, from Granville to Waitsfield, to look for a site.
So
We've been to
We've all-
every single site.
we've spent hundreds of hours, Jim and myself, Bob Ackland, these guys at
I
the
mean, we've
table
been
here.
doing it for 15 years, trying
Hundreds
to
of
figure
hours.
out a better site. The Rogers property came up for sale, and we thought this is a great opportunity to do that. And the Rogers were not interested. We've talked to the people at the Bobbin Mill. That's another great site. Both of them are on Route 100, which the road crew is ideal for the road crew, because deliveries all come on Route 100, everything else. Nobody has to drive through the middle of town or anything else. We have really looked at a lot of sites, every site. And at least from the planning commission's point of view, there isn't another available site that doesn't have wetland issues or landowner issues or something else.
Floodplain issues.
Floodplain
or
issues.
It's not in the Route one
Or
hundred
just
corridor,
size. Yeah,
extra traffic.
And we
Engineering
certainly-
to try to get there.
The town certainly doesn't own another site,
Right.
so.
On the other hand, I would think that and I will give it some thought, but that in terms of sites that, because of the hazards of this particular site, that even though the town owns it, that there might be preferable sites, and even with the development cost, if you had a site such as, the gravel, by the Bobbin Mill or the Rogers property, where you might have more reasonable access, safer access, more and lower development costs.
But they'd have to wanna sell the
Yeah.
whole land, and they don't.
Right.
Yeah,
And then-
both
and then there go your
landowners
development
are
costs.
absolutely opposed to selling the land to the town.
So those avenues are closed.
I mean, we can't just wait for a school closure. We don't know
No,
when
Well,
that's
you
gonna
don't
happen,
know
or if that's gonna happen, or
You
what
don't know when it's
consolidation
gonna
looks like, if it's gonna be Facein or
And that's-
Warren or.
It's
And
still
for-
not as good a site
Yeah.
as somewhere along
No, it still
100.
puts
where
us
all the
coming right through the
delivery
middle of
trucks
the
can go
village.
really
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah, it puts all that heavy
Um,
traffic through
but-
town.
I want to be clear that I'm not rooting for the closure of the Warren School, it's not,
Well, and the building is near condemned now, not 3 years from now, but now.
okay. Well, I think, I would say I'm not necessarily satisfied with your answers, but you've given me answers, which I think is a step.
Thank you.
I just
Rocky.
want to say I concur, and I think this board is developing some trust issues. This whole process has been rush, push, 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 push. And I've looked at other projects the town's done in recent years. We got a narrow bridge right below the school entrance that doesn't accommodate pedestrian traffic. In retrospect, maybe that wasn't the best design. We did downtown flood mitigation with grant money. We were gonna have a cobblestone street, pedestrians were gonna be in it, traffic was gonna be going so slow that it would resemble a European scene. What did we get? Pavement and brick parking spaces, which no one can see the brick when all the cars are parked there during the summer. Okay, plus one of the drains doesn't accommodate water because it's too high, and the bricks are crumbling at the Warren store or falling apart at the Warren store end of the sidewalk. That's a hazard. I've mentioned that before. It's a liability, but no one seems to want to deal with it. The whole area that we're talking about, this intersection, I would say you gotta get back further and look at it from Ellen Lane to somewhere past Von Lane. And all the way back into town, because one of the solutions to the traffic control, cheap solution, was, oh, let's paint some lines. You know how many people say to me, there's no way that I will turn my back on traffic walking into town. And I'm one of them. You know, it just doesn't, it's counterintuitive that I was brought up without sidewalks. There's still no sidewalks. I was trained at an early age, always face traffic. So there's been some solutions, but I wouldn't say they're good solutions. And it's not easy doing this work. Look, I'm not questioning anyone's motivation here. I want to be, you guys have worked really hard. I understand that, you know, for years, but that still doesn't mean, okay, well, this is the way we're doing it. Because I think going forward, safety issues are going to still be there. It's not going to be easy to figure out Main Street. It's scary to go over that bridge as it is now, you know, walking. So, and we're trying to encourage more non-automotive traffic. So that's bicycles and pedestrians. Not going to get easier with more of that kind of traffic on these intersections. You come down West Hill, there's no direction for people that are being sent from Sugar Bush, and whether they're being sent or not, they'll find their way because of all of the apps you have now. So you get to the bottom of the hill, there's no signs to say Warren Village, or, you know, there shouldn't be anything that directs someone to Elm Lane, because that's a bad intersection going out on 100. So that should be, in my opinion, one way. So, but still, you come into town and you know, we put up a steel barrier there, and it got hit within, you know, a week of being erected. So, you know, I understand. Oh, signage. We don't like signage, but we don't like people getting in accidents and getting hurt or killed. So it just, you know, the overview, I think, needs to be taken, and this is just one piece of the area, and this is just going to complicate things. And if we do have to make changes to accommodate what's there, then it's going to be even more expensive. So haste makes waste is what I'm saying to you guys, and this has been very hasty from my perspective, despite all the years you put in.
You can't have it both ways, Rocky. It's either hasty or
Yeah.
we're slow. And I think 15 years says we're pretty slow. The last year, we have packed a lot in to our endeavor here. And it's not hasty. And you hear us realizing that we're running out of time to get the bond vote done by town meeting. And I think you just heard us say that we're probably not gonna be able to do that, and that it's better to do it and get it right one time. You hear us
I did hear that.
doing that.
Yes, sir. Yes, board members.
Just FYI, the average speed going through Warren Village was 35 miles an hour. The average speed in Warren Village right now is 14 miles an hour.
Okay.
The cobblestones
Cobblestones
worked.
Yep, all that worked. And, you know, we haven't really put our minds to the section from the park and ride out to 100. That wasn't part of the scope of the downtown project. It's something that we've told you and everyone that we want to work on in the future. But there's only so much you can do with houses close to the road, the drop off right there above the park and ride on the west side. You know, there's not a lot of sidewalk to be done. And you want to see more people at a meeting than this and tell them they're gonna put a sidewalk right through their front yard in Warren Village. We'll see plenty of people.
Well, and then we have to balance all of that with what will likely be astronomical costs. I mean, when we talk about that bridge, it's like, okay, we'll build a separate pedestrian bridge. It's gonna be really expensive, and there we go, adding more money to the taxpayers. Like, I hear you, I feel you. I suggested we make the whole thing a shared use path and cars have to wait for pedestrians. Is that realistic? Maybe not. I don't know. Like, what are we gonna do? And let's keep talking about it. That's what I really want you guys to walk away from this, understanding that We as a board hear you and we care and we want to fix these things. We don't have the luxury of waiting to rebuild this town garage anymore.
Well said.
So are we gonna do are we gonna do the vote later? And have the information at the town meeting?
Yeah.
That's,
I
I
think
think that's where we've all landed.
Yes.
that seems to
agree.
make sense.
Yeah.
So to leave tonight, how do we want to divide up? Does the task force want to take those questions and delegate them out? Well, getting the presentation together, getting the information from Dan and finalizing the details on what we need next for the bond.
Sounds fun.
I'll work on the
Yes.
current town garage Bannon presentation.
Okay.
Can I ask just one more question? Sorry.
Sure, Jess.
It's kind of unrelated, but in the grand scheme of things and the conversation that Rocky's having and, with the planning commission, and is there somewhere where we can access, or is there I think last meeting, we talked a lot about all these different options, like the affordable housing option and the rec. Is there someplace in the website or archive where there is an overall arching plan for the town or vision of what points that where would that be?
Yes,
Where
come to the planning commission.
Called the town plan.
We had, it's the town plan and the
Yeah.
land use development regulations. We had a big meeting in, last June, where we got a whole bunch of citizens together and we, did some visioning for the town.
Yes,
And-
I missed that. I was away.
So there's a document from that and there will be a map. It's not finished yet, but it's in
Okay.
process that has recommendations for the village and recommendations for our connection with Irisville and recommendations for the town and recommendations for Main Street.
Amazing. Okay.
That is done, and the select board has a list of things which they should keep in the back of their mind or in the front of their mind about safety and driving around through downtown, guys in trucks going too fast, holding water before it gets to the town. There's a lot of issues on that.
And is that on the town website under planning commission? Is that where we would find that?
I don't know whether it
Town-
is or not.
We can help
Probably
you
isn't,
find
but
it.
we can put it on.
Okay, that would be helpful
I'll
for
make,
me.
I'll make sure that happens. I'll take responsibility for getting that, the highlights of the visioning thing on the planning commission's website.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that would help people
Yep.
just
Great
where
idea.
we are still moving in a positive direction, a common direction, I think that at the end of the day, we are all supportive of the same ideals and the same values. We live here for many years, many of us. So I think, having this common vision a little bit more public just helps the community and, understand. So that
Yeah,
would be
one of the
helpful.
things on it
for
is
me.
moving the town garage.
Yeah, no, and I'm sure that it is. And I'm like I said, I don't have any solutions. I only have problems. So, in this situation, I only have concerns. I'm sorry. I usually, that's not my motto when I'm attending a meeting, but, anyway, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Does the board have any other questions or
Okay,
comments for?
wait, so you're gonna start on the old garage site, working through the documents that we have showing how a new one doesn't work there, working with Andrew.
Yeah, I'll probably reach out to Bob. He had a lot of information
Okay.
on it, obviously. But at least start gathering what we have, about, what can be done on the existing site.
Okay, and,
I think when the task force gets together, we should get a statement from the guys who use the town garage,
okay,
you know?
Yep, we
And,
talked about
I
that.
mean, as somebody said, this is one of our greatest assets.
yeah,
You know,
Town
the
puts the
guys,
most
that-
resources into it.
the guys that work
Yeah.
there and the vehicles and everything else.
Yeah.
And if we're not taking care of it.
Yeah. So we can work out some details on the presentation and how we want to do all of that, but, from a grant perspective, is that something, Kaylee, can you continue to work on?
Sure, I
pulling
mean,
those- is that-
there's not many,
There isn't.
everything is getting erased at the moment,
Yeah.
so.
There isn't really anything
Um,
to do there.
I will keep my eyes, I'll look at state resources and
Yeah.
see maybe how other towns have been funding these. I know that we did an initial scan of that earlier, didn't we? Like, didn't we look at kind
Yeah,
of like
and,
how?
and you had suggested state
That was the-
appropriations bill, right?
Yeah, so I can look into that, and then, I think the other thing that's on the list is like bond council and who's taking the lead on that.
Yes.
Okay, so would it, that feels like a lot for you to do. Which one, would you like to just stick with the bond council and maybe Rebecca and I can look into,
I mean, I'd love
Funding
another
options?
person to be on the bond council call to
do you
make
wanna do
sure
it
I
together?
represent, sure,
Okay.
that would be great.
Yeah, okay. And then Andy, can you get us your questions, even if it's a photocopy, you don't have to type them all up, just like.
They'll get typed up.
Okay. And we'll get those over to Wyman Lamfair and we're all.
And schedule a meeting,
And
a
schedule
task
a
force
meeting,
meeting.
okay, and we're all in agreement with, sort of what we decided on this list could and couldn't go, right? And we wanted to add the removal of the demolition.
I think we should consider that.
Consider,
That
yeah,
was
I think
negotiable.
Making that a separate item.
Okay, and then sort of like, how can we reduce site work in general?
You guys don't need me for anything else. right?
no, thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you
So-
for being here.
It sounds like we're making a commitment to having an informational public meeting for town meeting. At which point we have some formal presentation organized.
Yes,
Okay, ready, set, go. And.
Okay,
we have a
we've
month.
got some tasks.
Yep.
We've got to get some information.
And what else? As far as the bond vote, like, we're not even worrying about what that date looks like
Well, I think we need more information on,
Right,
from the
Yeah, we need
council.
to know
Yep.
the steps that we need to take to make sure we're in accordance with.
Okay,
right.
and we are all in agreement that option B is preferable.
yes,
Okay, great.
It's not preferable.
Option
It's just-
A is
it's the only-
preferable,
it's-
but
it's
option
the
B is
one where-
preferable because.
Option.
Option B
makes
is where we're
most
starting
sense, yeah.
Yeah.
yep.
Okay, do you have a date for
Anything
that
else?
call, or have you not said it?
Bond council
Okay.
now.
Okay,
We have a list, and so if anyone knows of whether we
What was that?
consulted bond council before, it, from any of the people on the list, that's what they recommended. If
We can
we,
do some research.
okay,
we can do a name
Who we-
search.
yeah, who we reached out to before for previous bonds. would be helpful.
Our most recent bond was the solar,
Yes.
That's what, yeah.
and that wasn't that long ago, was it?
2014.
Okay, I feel like we're good on town brush.
Okay. Excellent, thank you. We have a few things to sign. Any other business before we move on to some signatures?
I'm just curious. This meeting's on, usually it's Tuesday, this is a Wednesday. I'm noting there's no media here. So how do people find out what you're doing? You know, I know,
It
I
was
know on a
warned and it's
national level,
taped
that's
and,
the trend, but can we?
no, that's not fair. It's,
I'm being funny,
Definitely
All
not
right,
our
it's not
intention.
funny.
all right then. But there's no media coverage. Let's go back to that. I'll withdraw my remark.
It wasn't intentional. It was a scheduling issue.
So they,
I understand,
their,
but
their regular one, our regular meetings are the second and fourth of the month. Those are the ones they schedule to come to. This is an extra meeting for us.
wouldn't you want to inform people? Because
We warned this meeting.
Was a vote.
It's,
You were-
so when,
This
when the
meeting was
meeting's
warned.
warned, MRV TV knows it,
Okay,
Lisa Loomis knows it,
okay,
they're just not here.
They just don't
Copy that,
have the
thank you.
And
staff.
there will be minutes.
Recorded?
And it's
Yes.
It
recorded.
is recorded.
It's recorded and they can get your recording?
We're
Yeah.
always recording the meetings.
I will try and curb my sense of humor.
We like a
did come
sense of
across as
humor.
a sense of humor.
just make
Just a
sure it's
little
humor.
sense of
Just
humor.
high stress lately, you know?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Is there any other business before we sign a few things?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Guys.
We have accounts payable in the amount of $81,561.97.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have
Good night and thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
Take care of each other.
Thank you, you too.
we have payroll in the amount of $14,496.52.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And minutes from January 14th.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's it.
I will not be in next week's meeting.
Okay.
What is next week's meeting? I feel like everything.
Back to a regular
has
meeting.
been
So
focused
confused.
on
It's
this.
gonna be about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Careful, you said it.
Yeah, right.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nice work. Thank you very much.